you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Moses Voss here from theChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there and ladies, things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. For 16 years and 2,200 episodes, we've been the Chris Voss Show. The CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, all the smartest, brilliant minds on the planet. And of course, I'm just the idiot with the mic. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one on the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Today, we're going to be turning to a good friend of mine. Loved him for years. He's a wonderful gentleman and a scholar and a debonair person. I don't know. I tried to make it sound really classy, Gary, and that's the best I can do. I flunked second grade. Gary
Love
Shapiro.
you, Chris. Love you. You've been great.
Gary Shapiro joins us on the show. He is the president and CEO of the Consumer Technology Association, CTA. He is the U.S. Trade Association that represents more than 2,200 consumer technology companies and owns and produces CES for the global stage in innovation. There's probably more consumer technology companies now. I don't know how old this Amazon thing is, but he directs a staff of over 200 employees, thousands of industry volunteers, leading his organization's promotion of innovation as a national policy to spur economy, create jobs, and cut the deficit. This is his sixth appearance on the Chris Voss Show, 6 years. And like we like to say, it can't be CES without having Gary on the Chris Voss Show. He's the author of the latest book to come out October 8th, 2024, called Pivot or Die, How Leaders Thrive When Everything Changes, and all that good stuff. Welcome to the show, Gary. How are you?
I am great, honored, and thrilled to be on your show, Chris. It's always great to talk to you because it's not an interview, it's a conversation.
I love it, man. It's good to have you as well. Give us .coms, .techs, wherever you want people to find out more about you guys on the interwebs.
CES.tech, CES.tech, or CTA.tech, TECH, CTA. CTA is the Consumer Technology Association. It's a big nonprofit trade association of over 1,000 companies, and CES is what we own and produce, but we also do a lot of things. We're involved in Washington and state legislatures. We do technical standards, we do market research, and we produce events. But we have one goal, and that's to make the world better through innovation.
So for people that don't know, because every now and then I meet somebody who doesn't know what the CES show is. What is the CES show? How long has it been going on? How big is this thing?
The CES is the coolest, funnest event of any type in the world. It's not a sporting event, but it's a business event. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely one of the largest, or the largest, depending on what definition you use. Its footprint is absolutely huge. It's 2.6 million net square feet of exhibit space. There's over 4,000 exhibitors. It's been around since 1967. It started in New York, moved to Chicago. Chicago in January is a little cold. Moved to Las Vegas. First big business event to move to Las Vegas, way back in 76. That's 1976, before my time. And moving to Las Vegas, we just grew, prospered, did great, caught this thing called innovation and consumer technology. And although as a consumer, it's out there, it's become pretty heavily business to business. But basically, we get more people in Las Vegas from outside the United States than any event in the country, and including sporting and business, any business event. We'll get over 50,000 people from outside the United States, in addition to 110,000 or so, or 100,000 from inside the United States. So that's about 140, 150,000 people we'll be getting.
Every day, did you say?
No, the way we count, which is not how everyone counts, is our numbers are actually honest. You can only be counted as a person one time for an event, no matter how many times you go, no matter how many buildings you go through, no matter how many days, you're only one person. Sorry. That's not true with some others, and we also independently audit.
It sounds like it's going to be a huge show. I mean, we've been through some turbulent times. We'll talk about that in your book, of Pivot or Die. Over the last few years, COVID really hit a lot of events and stuff. How are you guys faring on coming back full force and in size and scope?
I'm thrilled with how we're doing, because not only was there COVID, but, there's the economy, there's uncertainty, there's global issues involving relationships with certain, there's a few wars going on.
Yeah.
So there's definitely been an impact from all those things. I just read Las Vegas's head person, Steve Hill, said it shows about 90% coming back in terms of the attendance, and I think we're close to that at this point.
Awesome sauce. It is my favorite show to ever go to. It's like a huge toy store. It's like an adult, I don't want to say that. It's a huge toy store where there's technology and all this stuff. What are you most looking forward to? What are you seeing is kind of really sticking out there as the leading edge of technology at the show this year?
What I love about the show is it inspires people, and it gives people a hand to cutting relationships with other people. As much as I'm the paid cheerleader for the tech world in the United States, I love face-to-face. I love the serendipity of discovery. I love the fact we get over 1,000 companies in Eureka Park for startups, and they meet potential customers, investors, big company partners. Big companies love to go to Eureka Park, and you have everyone from Shark Tank and Mark Cuban walking around, trying to see who should be on the show, to the top people, the top retailers from around the world are walking around because they want to see the next big thing. They want to be inspired. They want to help others. And the big companies are always looking to cut deals because that's how they grow. And that's really important. So what am I looking forward to? Just the excitement and optimism and the fact that there's a better world out there with innovation that solves big problems like clean air and clean water and healthcare and hunger and food. And there's so much of that out there. And of course, it's all overlaid with generative AI, which is huge throughout the show. All these creative ways of solving problems. I've been joking with my staff lately because for at least a year or two, I've been talking about generative AI will teach us how to communicate with our pets and understand their languages and other animals. Now, in the last week, there's been all sorts of articles written that, yeah, it's true. It's going to happen.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I have huskies, so I'm used to just being yelled at all day long. So I'm pretty sure I know what they're yelling at me. They're just like, give us more treats.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Let me out. Give me food. I get it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just I'm never fully approved of what I'm doing. I need to do more of whatever they want. But yeah, AI is really huge. We've had a lot of AI interviews on the show. This year, we're doing a lot over CES. AI just seems to be the hottest thing coming. And one of the things I've had trouble with is I normally can, get on to new technologies and I can kind of onboard with them. But this AI is just... it's just moving hyper fast. You're just like, what's going on now this week? It's crazy. How are you doing at keeping up on the new AI stuff?
The way we, as humans, deal with everything is we try to relate it to something in our past. And for me, I think about it like the internet itself. Mm-hmm. When it came on, there wasn't that commercialization of it yet, which I was lucky enough to get involved in that very deeply and help make that happen around the world. But it was something that we knew was big. We just didn't know how big. And it was more like pets.com and stuff like that people went crazy in the late 1990s and the market exploded, then it imploded. That's not the generative AI, I think, is like that. It's growing quickly because it's been made easily accessible to everyone. People see the value of it, and businesses are seeing the value for productivity. So there's so many different use cases for it. And the thing that's happened is the problem with the dot-com explosion in the 1990s was that every business plan assumed there was broadband. We have broadband now. Ironically, what we don't have is enough electricity. Yeah. And that's one of the focuses of the CES is that for the first time, we're talking about something we've always assumed existed, which is enough electricity to not only run our products, but the electric vehicles. And then there's something also big coming down the pike, and we'll be talking about in the show in the next few years, is quantum computing. Yeah. So all computers will work on zeros and ones. Mm-hmm. Quantum adds a third dimension, which allows a logarithmic increase in speed and solving, obscure medical problems of obscure diseases, and comes up with not only the solutions which generative AI could come up with, but testing the solutions. Yeah. So I think we're in a just extremely exciting place where all of us today are lucky to be alive in this era because the change is so phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing the advancements of ChatGPT, and somebody who said to me the other day, they're like, that's only been out like a year and a half or something. I'm like, what? And it's crazy. And the creativity it brings, like, it's really opened up my ability to create. And I'm no artist. Like, I don't have artistic abilities. I'm really logical and reasonable. But being able to go onto some of these AI programs and have them draw stuff for you if I want a logo or if I want to talk about something and make something for a post. And it's so great. You can just be like, hey, make me a picture of a guy in a business suit doing whatever. And boom, there it is, 3 seconds. And it looks like professional artwork. And so it's just crazy. And then, of course, we've had people on the show. We had one guy who wrote a book who aligned AI with the Origin of Species book, and he believes that AI will be its own species technically. How's that for crazy?
That boggles my mind, and that's the kind of thing AI will do to us. To continue to surprise us with what it could do. Yeah, and that's great. And of course, AI has been around for a while. I mean, if you've flown an airplane, a commercial plane, it's been using AI for 95% of the trip to get you going. That's what automatic pilot is. But generative AI allows you to take it a step further and actually create and learn and move it. It frustrates me. My navigational system in my car hasn't figured out the way I like to go. All the shortcuts, all the things are wrong, and it just doesn't learn.
Wow.
But the learning aspect to me is really cool.
And the electricity thing you mentioned, I mean, they're having to they're talking about firing up old nuclear plants, 3 Mile Island and stuff. It's just crazy so that they can power AI.
It makes sense. I did an embark on an aircraft carrier a few years ago, and those huge vessels owned by our government they'd get 5,000 people on there. And those 5,000 people live around they're all nuclear powered.
Yeah.
In fact, that's something that, since it's timely, and Jimmy Carter just passed away, that was his thing. He got our Navy nuclearized. He was a nuclear engineer before he was president. I mean, nuclear to me is a huge part of the answer. Of course, there's great things like renewables, but they are such a tiny percentage. And even with those, no one talks about it, but the huge expense of even getting renewable energy is not only the construction of the windmills or the solar or whatever you're talking about. It's getting the electricity from one place to another costs literally billions of dollars in transmission lines, and those aren't built.
Yeah. So lots of infrastructure that has to happen.
Absolutely.
With CTA, you guys do a lot of advocating, speaking in front of Congress and lobbying them for, to make sure that they're up on technology, make sure they're business friendly and all that sort of good stuff. Are you seeing that they're going to keep up with this AI stuff? I mean, they were kind of struggling to interview some of the Google and Facebook executives the other day about how email works.
I think actually it's a different generation of politicians that are in there. I think they know their stuff. I was part of the Senate where the senators just sat and listened to a whole bunch of people from every different interest in generative AI. And it was amazing because I've never seen it happen before, where senators will actually walk in, even if they're not in the relevant committee, and they'd sit there and listen for an hour or two.
Wow.
And I am pretty optimistic about our government in terms of what they do with AI. I mean, there were some really dumb things coming from business and others that meant good. Actually, Elon Musk is one of them. Yeah. And what they did was they wanted to have a 6-month moratorium on generative AI.
Yeah.
And we opposed that immediately. That just was not a good idea. So the good guys will listen to the moratorium and the bad guys will go ahead. Because part of generative AI is stopping bad guys from doing things. We need generative AI to do that.
Yeah, because they're already using AI now to do bad things.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see it in your inbox.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy that's going on. Anything more we want to plug at what's going on at CES you want to talk about before we get to your book?
Sure. I mean, CES, it's only open to people with a connection with innovation and technology, but it could be a media investor, employee of a company, obviously. We're having some incredible speakers, including, the hottest CEO in America, Jensen, who heads up, NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. We have Ed Bastian of Delta, first trade show keynoter ever to use Sphere in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool.
That thing is crazy, that Sphere, huh?
Yeah, we're not allowed to call it the Sphere. It's Sphere.
It's Sphere.
So I want to be good with our partner there. And then we have a whole bunch. We have 1,100 speakers. A lot of these, if you go to our website, you'll see they'll be streamed keynotes. People can watch it on their own. You don't have to be a member of the industry to do that. And, a lot of these will be recorded for posterity. So these are big, but we get a lot, everyone from the CEO of Twitter, or X as it's now called, Linda Yaccarino, to so many others that have been there. Panasonic and Delta are both celebrating their 100th anniversary by keynoting CES. And we just have some sessions on the big issues, sessions on big policies. We have people from all over the world speaking, giving their views. And it's really a festival as much as it is a trade show business event, because people are celebrating and sharing information on innovation. So there's a lot there. CES is also one of the world's largest auto shows, mobility event. We have not only cars, but electric vehicles and scooters and flying machines, as well as electric boats and all sorts of different devices that get people around, which is cool. It's also one of the biggest health technology shows, if not the biggest in the world, in terms of showing everything from COVID on. There's been so much in that area. And of course, we don't talk about it a lot, and it was the biggest surprise to me. The last show last year was the accessibility for people with disabilities. It's huge. A lot of the leaders of that community come. They have incredible interactions with companies that are actually trying to sell those, but even perhaps more so with companies that are not, and they don't realize what they're sitting on, and they get educated on that, which is cool. And of course, overlying that whole theme is sustainability. There's a lot of companies very focused on the environment. They talk about it. They're green. A trade show's green. The average person who comes has about 29 meetings. It would take several months traveling around the world to have those meetings, so it's efficient. And of course, there's no better place in the world than Las Vegas to have a trade show.
You know, the one thing they talked about with the AI origin of species becoming its own species is one of the challenges of being human is we're kind of in a box of where we focus on propagation of the species. Every biological species operates on propagation of species, and we spend a lot of time, worried about mating and raising children and making sure that there's, the survival of the human race. And the one thing the gentleman talked about was AI isn't going to be concerned about that because it doesn't have to worry about, buying a hot car so, he can find a gal. It's going to think about things that, we don't think about. And it's limitless. It doesn't sleep. Like I got to get some sleep every now and then. It's just limitless. And so it's going to be thinking about solving cancer and disease, hopefully, and all sorts of different things. At least we hope it will. It might just be like these humans are annoying, but
it's a great point. I mean, certainly humans are creative, but they're not very efficient, and often the time we do stupid things. We have wars, and you're right, we do crazy things. But if it wasn't for that drive, where would we be? We wouldn't have future generations. We wouldn't have jewelry stores. We wouldn't be spending a lot of money we shouldn't be spending. So anyway, the point of it is that AI, you're right, will solve big problems. I mean, and the question is, what will the role be for the AI robots and others versus the roles of humans? And there's a lot of different schools of thought. There's a lot of science fiction books that were written years before anyone even used the phrase generative AI about, future, what it'll look like, that balance between man and machine. And, right now we have machines like cars, and they're killing 40,000 of us a year and putting about almost 1 million people in the hospital. Wow. And that's something which, now that we have generative AI, self-driving vehicles are a reality.
Yeah.
But what's getting in the way of that? We have people like humans in various occupations. Take trial lawyers. Trial lawyers are fighting like hell to block, and they've literally stopped Congress from acting on self-driving vehicles and saving lives. There's a whole carnage industry that depends upon death.
They make all the money.
They make the number one lawsuit filed in the country is for vehicle accidents, and we could avoid those. The technology is there, even at this point of generative AI. Not everyone, because it's never going to be perfect, but most of them. Those people who died could live, and all the clogging our hospitals with all these things and these head wounds and all that. It's so unnecessary. And that's, you want to talk about what we do in Washington, what I'm frustrated about. That is the biggest deal. Now, out of fairness, Trump did everything he could, as did Obama. Biden and his team, or whoever is running the presidency, they just stopped everything on self-driving. They gave it to the trial lawyers. And now I expect with Trump, especially his new designee as Secretary of Transportation, who talks about the fact that he has lots of kids and they distract him when he's driving. He said, that's going to end. He doesn't want to have those accidents when they're fighting in the back and spilling coffee and food.
That's what adoption is for.
No. The thing what it will do to our economy, I mean, I'm talking to you from Detroit, and there's car companies. What can they do? Wow, they could produce vehicles that are rolling home entertainment units, or home office units, or sleep units. There's no shortage of what you could do with a vehicle once you get self-driving, and you could take some of the cost out of it. Because if you don't need that driver column and the steering wheel and all the information for the driver, it removes a lot of the weight, it removes a lot of the cost, and we could change it. And you want to talk about the disabled community, it just empowers them totally. I personally am passionate about, this is the kind of thing where technology, AI, all combines together in a way which solves a really big problem. We've all had friends that have died or been seriously injured in car accidents, and to think of that this is unnecessary going forward, it's exciting.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting world. So let me ask you this before we get to your book too. I've always wondered about this because I'm interviewing a lot of CEOs for my new book, and one of these days I got to sit down with you, maybe follow you around CES one of these times. And how do you do it? What coffee are you drinking? How do you stay energized through these events? And it's a pumped up event. You're almost maybe 24/7 on and during CES. How do you do it? What are you drinking for coffee? First
of all, the plan was in December from Thanksgiving on, I try to have a clean life. Like actually, since Thanksgiving, I don't think New Year's Eve I took a sip of alcohol, but I haven't had any alcohol. And I've tried to, exercise almost every day, try to do things to prepare. I should be doing voice exercises. I didn't do that this year, but I usually do that. Just good, clean living. And the other thing is that it's just so energizing. I joked that the official drug of the CTA staff at CES is Ambien at night because my brain can't process everything. It's like the one time I take Ambien a few nights in a row at a controlled dosage and make sure that I could, get to sleep because I can't exist. But I am getting older. And although you announced me as a CEO and president, the truth is I will share. It's not breaking news, but I'll share that I am no longer the president. I'm just the CEO. Oh. And as of yesterday, the vice chairman of the board. We have a president, Kinsey Fabrizio, has worked with us for getting close to 20 years and has been groomed and handles and is doing, in many ways, she's like 1,000 times better than me. So I think between the two of us, we're doing okay. And we have a tremendous team, frankly. I mean, we got people we get the best of the best. And we get them because we're considered one of the best places to work. We've gotten a zillion awards, and look, what we're working on is pretty exciting. This is the future. So we have great people working with us.
I mean, the machinery and the moving parts for the size of this event. I mean, I go to every year and I promise myself, I'm going to hit every booth. I'm going to sit every booth.
You can't do that, Chris. Chris, I don't know. You could do the math, but let's say that I think there's 4,300 booths or exist stands, as they say in Europe. 4,300 times multiplied. You'd have to spend 2 seconds in each booth or something crazy like that. Plus, you put in 60 or 70 miles of walking. So you gotta, we have a great app. We urge people to download it, and you can plan out your visits, wear comfortable shoes, and we have all sorts of recommendations for people. Plan it out, and you could do some things afterwards. You can watch some of those keynotes after the show. We know that it's going to be pretty full for the keynotes. Yeah. So you can see them elsewhere, or you can do other things. But you have to plan it out, and you have to leave yourself time. And that's your point is a good one. You can't just plan out all your time. You got to be able to walk. If you can't walk around Eureka Park and some of the big areas of the show, the mobility or health area. I mean, and we have a whole area of innovations award winners, which we had a record number of entries this year for that contest. So who's the most innovative products? It's just astounding. I mean, it is overwhelming, frankly. It's overwhelming to me. And my dirty little secret is that I don't get to see much of the show because I'm greeting, foreign dignitaries and introducing keynoters and having meetings. Everyone wants a meeting. Like they have to go back and say they met with the leadership. So that's why having people with different titles is very handy right now. Yeah. We have just a first class team, which is thrilling.
And you guys pull it off. Like I just look at all the moving parts, the stages, it's just crazy how much goes into it.
I'll give you my view of life because I know your audience is so important in terms of what they bring. Is it I tell our team that, look, people will want to make a business decision based on what they personally want to do and then justify it. Some people will never go to Las Vegas. I get that. We're not going to get those people. But if we can help make it a great experience for anyone there, what does that mean? That means like spending a lot of money and investing in thicker carpet or directional sign or an app or buses that get people around quickly, making everything as easy as possible for someone who comes. Then we're likely to succeed. And that philosophy of helping out the customers who come, all of them, not just the people who pay us money, the exhibitors, but everyone who's there, and empowering our staff to help out in situations and frankly, be nice.
Yeah.
It's important. We live and die by our surveys after the show. We survey the media, we survey the exhibitors, we survey the people who are just, coming from abroad. We survey even people who decided not to come after registering just to find out why they don't come. Mm-hmm. And we take those very seriously and act on the results of those surveys.
That brings the quality to the show. So your newest book that just came out October 8th, 2024, Pivot or Die: How Leaders Thrive When Everything Changes. You and I have certainly been through that over the last 6 years. We've talked about it through COVID, and at one point the show was virtual, I think 2021. Give us a 30,000 overview, your new book, please.
Certainly COVID inspired the book, but now this sudden switch of politics in Washington, which a lot of people didn't expect, a complete takeover by the Trumps party, there's a pivot for you. So it's timely in terms of what it says. And basically it says, and you talked about Darwin before with your prior guest, and the new Darwinism is generative AI. And perhaps it is, but Darwin was reported to have said, although he never actually said it, he implied it, that it's not the strongest that survives, it's not the fastest that survive. It's those who can adapt to change the quickest. Oh. And one thing that our era shares, we all share, is we are living in an era of rapid change, and you have to adapt. And the book starts with COVID and how my personal journey in CES and how we adapted way quicker than anyone else through a series of very good coincidences. And frankly, my wife, who called it from like early January of 2020 and said, this is going to do all these things. And I talk about it and how we made decisions about the CES and how companies pivoted, because it was a forced pivot by everyone with a business. And it produced some great things. It's producing them still today in healthcare and technology and transportation. And what I noticed in our industry until COVID, there was a lot of Me Tooism. Like every company would look at the market and say, take a photo of it and say, I could do this if I could grow in this area. So would their competitors. Yeah. COVID changed that. They all went in different directions. Now they're doing different things. A company like Panasonic, which was a consumer company, is now most of their business is business to business, and they're still using CES to get to that business. But you look at other companies, and there's so many stories there, whether it's the Ring, which started at CES, and how they pivoted. A lot of the most successful companies in the world, their story is a pivot from founders that tried things and didn't work. Even I read your book, Chris. I loved it. I thought it was one of the best business books I've read. And you talk about all the pivots in your life. And he made them. And that pivoting takes courage, man.
Yeah,
and it's you're going into the vast unknown. It's like the Star Trek where people have never been before. And that's what you're doing with our lives. Yeah. But as a person that's getting to the age where I'm giving people advice, a lot of younger people are very anxious about these decisions in life. And my response to them is, don't sweat it out. What you do after high school, or what college you go to if you go to college, it's not that important. What's important is you learn about yourself, because some of the things are random. You may meet a spouse or a loved one there. But even your first job, it'll teach you about yourself, and you get valuable experience and self-knowledge. The only really big decisions in life are like 4. 1 is, are you going to commit a major crime? 2, you're going to do something unsafe. 3, are you going to marry somebody? Because that's expensive to get out of. And number 4, are you going to have kids? Those are 4 big decisions. The rest of them, be willing to experiment and pivot, especially when you have the glory of youth. But a lot of people actually, they pivot when they're older. Life changes for all of us as much as we want to keep it the same. And so whether, a loved one passes away or things don't go as you thought, you can't keep the status quo. But as humans, we're programmed to keep the status quo and want the status quo. And that's not real life. And that's why Darwin is one of my heroes, because he recognized that. And it's a good thing to always remember. We'll never be able to preserve what we have, but we have to adapt to changing circumstances. And the quicker you adapt, the better. And that's what CES does. It gets people together. They see the future right before them. They meet people, and they can change their business models.
The startup pivot you talk about, the forced pivot, the failure pivot, the success pivot, remote working was something that, also got thrown into the mix at COVID. What do you have any thoughts on what you see the future of that becoming? I've been hearing that remote working has been going away. Maybe there's only 10% of new jobs on the market for remote. Maybe that's finally ending.
Well, I know from a CEO perspective, it's very frustrating not to have that face-to-face contact. And if there's one people interested in getting back to, business meetings and travel and trade show and senior customers, it's CEOs. Mm-hmm. And their natural inclination is to want to have everyone in a room and talk to them and get the body language and get the relationships and the trust flowing. Mm-hmm. And I get that. On the other hand, the reality is things have changed. People want different things, and some jobs can be done remotely. And I think every company is trying to figure out what they're doing. I mean, we have issues. For example, we allow some people remote, but we don't allow them to be remote in California or New York or New Jersey because they have some crazy laws there we don't want to follow. Oh. And, it's what kind of state it is. It's the reason they're doing it. We have found, and maybe it's because of what we do, that a lot of our former employees are consultants to us because they know who we are. We don't have to train them. We trust them. And they have lifestyle changes they want. And the nature of CES especially is a lot of intense work for 6 months. And then like from the end of January through the summer again, it's a little more relaxed. And so we have a whole bunch of CES full-time staff, but we have a lot of consultants, huge numbers actually. So we're flexible. I think every employer has to look at their own situation and look at their jobs and determine it. But it's like Milton Friedman of the Chicago School said, if you discriminate against people, then you're cutting down your potential worker pool and the number of great workers you'll attract. I'm a little more flexible in my approach. I've been remote commuting for 20 years. My wife is based in Detroit. I'm based in Washington. Oh. So I've done both ways. We have kids. It's not perfect. Trust me. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult for a family. It's difficult when you want to go to the kids' games and things like that. And you feel guilty about work. You feel guilty about home, but that's the nature of being a parent. And those things we'll just have to work through. But it's still evolving. I think a lot of companies are going 2 or 3 days a week. And some companies, it's full time. If that's what, it depends. If you're making stuff, you can't work remotely.
Yeah.
But if you're more, it's called white collar or new collar, you're able to do a lot more of it. I like the thinking time. I like the flying time even though sometimes it really is bad. I could think because thinking is really important for me.
That's one of the things we should get into one of these days with an interview with you off the CES thing. But how you deal with the time for yourself to think through things, maybe any meditation or self-awareness, self-help. Time out for where you can operate in your space and focus on what you would need to do as a CEO, stuff like that.
I'd love to, Chris. I'm always happy to talk to you. You're an interesting guy. I read what you write. You're a great writer. You're great. You have a radio voice. I wish I had.
I have radio face, is what they call it.
Yeah, I have that too. I also, I respect the pivots you made and your successes, and you don't let the grass grow under your feet.
No. Yeah, it's like you say, you got to keep pivoting. You got to keep, being an entrepreneur really is just a problem solver, constantly problem solving. And I remember seeing this, there's a guy on TikTok who sells private jets, and he's 60, 65. He's been doing it all of his life since he was young. And I was watching how he goes through his day. He did here's how I, go through my day, and like midday he goes to the gym. And he was like, what's funny is I've been in business for, however many years, 5 decades. And he says, every day there's new problems to solve with new technology, with new AI, with all these things. And that's what you guys are doing at CES. You're helping people find new resources to be more efficient, to get stuff done. He goes, but it's funny that I'm this old and it never ends, that there's new problems we have to continually solve every day. And I'm like, yeah, come to think of it, that's what being an entrepreneur is about.
And some people love that, and that's what turns them on. And some people want a job where they could just turn it off after the 8 hours and move on. It's know yourself when you choose what you're doing. And the fact that people are listening to you, that means they're curious and they want to explore, which is great.
Mm-hmm. So Pivot and Die, what do you hope people come away with? We may have covered a little bit of that, but final thoughts on that as we go out.
This is my 4th book, and I am gratified that I could share, my experiences, what I've learned. And when people come up, and I love doing book signings because people tell them how my prior books have changed their lives or their kids' lives, or they got them to do something different, or they started a business. And that's the biggest turn on there is. I mean, the fact that you've affected someone's life in a positive way. It's tough to do, one-on-one, which is I try, and maybe sometimes I'm effective, sometimes not. I mentor people, I work with people, but to actually change people through a book is to me exciting. And it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of helping people. Like I wish I had read my books when I was younger. I wouldn't have made all the mistakes I made.
You should have wrote them sooner.
Yeah, well,
holding down on
things you got to. I talk to a lot of executives when they sell their companies. And I try to give them a caution that someone's buying your company because they think they can make more money than you're making right now, and that means they're going to change things. And 99% of the time, after the honeymoon, the person's gone within 3 years, no matter what they say.
Yeah.
And I say, what could I have said to you differently? And one of them said, you couldn't. You couldn't have convinced me that this would have happened. I just had to learn it and live it. And that's what life is like. You got to experience things yourself.
That's true. And the great things about books is we share the stories, we share our cathartic journeys, and we learn from each other. You find people that have blueprints. I remember writing my book, and I was at the point where I was like, I was writing, I felt like I was writing all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy from, I thought I was at that moment.
It's from The Shining.
The Shining, yeah. And I complained to one of the authors that came on the show, and she goes, Chris, there's somebody who needs to hear you and your book. You don't know who that person is. You may never meet them, but they need to hear you and your story, and they're going through some sort of thing that only you can save them from. And so it's great. That's why we have so many wonderful authors like yourself on the show and everything else. I'm excited. CES 2025. I'm so glad we're like 5 years away from COVID and all that crap. Jeez, what a nightmare.
Knock wood. I never take it for granted until the show's over.
Oh yeah, now you love the show. You're like this show is awesome now. Just losing it for a year was bad. But final thoughts as we go out, Gary, on the show and everything else.
Final thought is life is an adventure. Technology can make it better. Innovation's important. And I don't want to screw it up in my job and not allow people to innovate or not do something right. Or if I don't do my job right, people won't get together or government will screw it up.
Throwing some shade at the government there, yeah. But it's good that you're there to advocate and lobby and advocate for business. Business is such an important thing to this world. So, Gary, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And then I think we got the .tech or the .com for CES, right?
Both of them. CES.tech and CTA.tech.
So much exciting, folks. Go see it. It's the greatest toy showroom in the world. I love seeing all the newfangled things and all the cool stuff, and it's just so exciting. It's a thrilling thing. Thank you, Gary, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
And thanks to Gary for coming on the show. Thanks, to our audience, for tuning in. Order up the book wherever fine books are sold. Pivot or Die, How Leaders Thrive When Everything Changes. Thanks to my audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the whatever it is, and all that good stuff. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out.